Hey there, welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time. My name's Brianna, this is Breland's Books. Today I'm going to be doing the spooky book tag. This tag was originally created by Rose Books. I'll link her original video down in the description bar, but I was tagged to do this by Meg over at Meg Talks Life. Thank you so much for tagging me. I'm going to link her video down below as well. You guys should definitely check her out. She's awesome. And this tag was surprisingly hard for me to come up with answers to, because I don't really read a lot of, spooky, creepy Halloween type books. I read a lot of fantasy books, but not all of the ones I read are darker. So I had struggles with some of these, and a couple of things are repeated, but I did my best. So let's get right into it. The first question, Corn Maze. What book had you lost and confused from the very beginning? For this one, I went ahead and put The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Ellen Hopkins. This book has such a complicated plot. You don't even really know what's going on. There's so many things happening. And I would just kind of sit there and I'm just like, what? And you just have to bask in the awesomeness that is this book. I love this book. I love the characters. They're all fantastic. It's a trilogy. I've read the first two. I'll be reading the third one this month. Next question. Haunted House. What book has the creepiest setting? For this one, I went with Dorothy Must Die and the twisted, perverted, dark Oz, because I think everyone's seen The Wizard of Oz or is familiar with the concept of Oz, and it's this happy, magical place where yeah, there's darker stuff going on, but it's always so magical, and there's munchkins. And then this book just takes it and just twists it around until it's something very different. And it's so fascinating to read, and there's just so much. And it's such a good book. And the setting, it makes Oz sound truly terrifying, which I never thought would be a thing. Ghost Boyfriend. Who is your eternal book boyfriend? For this one, I had to choose from many, many people. There's lots of options out there. But honestly, it's Knox from Dorothy Must Die. I think he's amazing, and I just love him so much. I just want to know him, and I think part of why I like him so much is because I relate to Amy's character so much, and she loves him, so why shouldn't I? I just think he's a very interesting character, and he just sounds amazing. I just love him. The next question is Caramel Apple Suckers, and it's best dang Halloween book ever. And for this, I don't have a copy of it, but I recently read Frankenstein for the first time, and I think that would be perfect Halloween read. It's Frankenstein. It's a classic Halloween book, and I really enjoy reading classics. So if you like classics and you're looking for a book to read, I would suggest Frankenstein. Vampires and Everything. Least favorite Halloween trope. I don't have a lot of tropes that I outright hate or dislike. I think there's a lot of tropes that get used commonly and used poorly, but the one trope that I could think of relating to Halloween that I truly hate is unnecessary gore. I don't have a book to go with me on this one. I'm just going to talk about it. I am okay with gore if I think it is important or necessary to the plot, but I don't like when authors just put in gory scenes for the sake of it, because it can be after a while and there's so much happening, I'm just too much blood, and if it's unnecessary and out of style for that author to do, that's when I'm really turned off by it, because it's just, my head really itches. Ugh. Pumpkin and Everything. Favorite Halloween trope. I don't know what makes something a Halloween trope. This one was hard for me to think of things that would qualify, but I really like stories about wizards and witches. I again didn't pick a book for this just because I have a lot of different books about witchery. Classics like Harry Potter, or newer ones this is about witches too. I really like how different the mythology and the origin stories are for witches, and for how they get their powers, and for the types of witches, and things like Beautiful Creatures where they're we're not witches. I think that's really funny when they're all just hold up, we ain't witches. But yeah, I really enjoy reading about witches. I think they're my favorite, mythical being to read about over, vampires or werewolves or anything else like that, or ghosts. Witches are my favorite. There's the repetition thing happening, but Evil Incarnate, the most evil villain. For me, I had to go with Dorothy from Dorothy Must Die. It's just mind-blowing, because we all know who Dorothy used to be and who she started as, But seeing her, there's a scene in this book that's extremely upsetting, and it was hard for me to read. So if you're easily, like, squeamish about certain things, there's a scene in this book that'll really upset you. It's the worst in this one. The other ones I don't think are as bad. And it's not like it's to help, it makes you understand just how awful Dorothy is. Because, like, up until then, I think there was a part of me that was like, oh, Dorothy can't be that, like, there's gotta be still some good left in her. But as soon as I read that, you just truly see how far she's gone. And I think the most interesting villains are the ones who are unapologetic villains. They're not, like, I don't really love revenge plot lines as much. I just like, these people are evil, and you don't, it doesn't have to make sense, there doesn't have to be a purpose, they're just twisted people. And what I like about this is we get to see how she started, we know how she was in the beginning, and then we see how twisted she has become in her desire for power and for more and more and more constantly. I think those are the most interesting. I'm all here for a good redemption storyline for a villain. Like, in the second half of the Mortal Instruments series, I think that storyline was handled beautifully, and he was evil for a reason, and in that case, it was, if you've read the books, you know what I'm talking about. We all cried together, it's okay. But I'm not as interested in, antagonists and villains who aren't really villainous. If you're going to write a villain, write a villain. If you're writing an antagonist, that is slightly different. But if you're going to classify someone as a villain, then I think they should be unapologetically a villain, unless something drastic happens to make them see differently. I don't think it can be just like they lose, so then they're like, I was wrong all along. Like, something needs to happen to force them to change their thinking, because that's realistic. Bad people don't just lose and then realize, oh, that was bad. Bad people have to work and have to earn and have to struggle, and I like realistic things like that, and characters. Ouija board, a book that messes with stuff you don't want to be involved with. I cannot handle reading books about kidnappings and things like that, especially if it's, like, based off a true story. I can't do it. It scares me. It freaks me out. Full moon. What character do you turn into on the full moon? I think this was my favorite question, because there's so many characters that I relate to, but then I really sat down and thought. And for me, I kind of just picked a character that I already relate to, but just become, like, a more intense version of, because that's kind of what happens to me on, on full moons. Like, I just become a more intense version of parts of myself. It's not consistent. But I went with Hermione from Harry Potter. I've always related to Hermione a lot, but on full moons, I feel like more commonly than other aspects of my personality, my, like, busybodiness just, like, amplifies, and I'm just like, I have to learn everything. I have to do an entire weeks of school in, like, 2 hours, and I go a little crazy sometimes. It's not what happens every time, but that is, like, a thing that I noticed about myself. And I love Hermione. I think she's a great character. I relate to her a lot, but especially on full moons. All Hallows Eve. The other world and this world have meshed together for one night. What book world would you want to mesh? What book world would you want to be swept up in? This one was hard because there's so many books that I want to be in that world. I'm torn between 3 because I'm indecisive. There's, like, the classics, like Oz or Wonderland. I would love to go to either of those places. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. But for, like, a book that I've read recently that's more of a contemporary one, in 1,000 Pieces of You, there are different dimensions that they travel to, and I would love to go to any of the dimensions that they travel to. I think they're very interesting, especially there's one that's, like, set, and it's, like, further along than, like, our dimension, and then in the dimension in the book, which is further along than ours, because they travel between dimensions. But I think any of the dimensions in here would be fascinating to go to. So, how gorgeous is that cover, by the way? Voodoo Doll. What author would you love to take control of and force them to write whatever you want, right? Yeah. So for this one, I said, okay, originally my first thought when I heard this question was Stephenie Meyer with the sequel to The Host, but Meg said that one in her video, so I don't want to just repeat what she said, even though I completely agree, because there was promised a sequel and I never got it, and I want it. Another one that I would still really like to do that with is Rick Yancey in The Fifth Wave. I would really like to see stories about all the characters before the waves start. like a prequel, and not just with like Cassie and Ben, with all of them, with Nugget and with Ringer and Pound Cake and all the other guys. So basically with the entire squad, I would like to see what they were like before. Not necessarily with, like, it's not as much about like what they did with their lives, it's who they were as people before the world ended, because I think that was my favorite part of the fifth wave, was seeing Cassie talk about herself before, and there's a bit, she talks a lot about who I was, about the new Cassie and the old Cassie and the new Ben and the old Ben and all of that, and like the new Sam, her little brother, and the old Sam, and I found that was probably my favorite part of that book series, is just how much my favorite part of that book series was just Cassie acknowledging the change and what she wanted and what she was and who she wanted to be, and I love that trilogy. Black Cat, what red flags do you look for when starting a book? I really don't like the whole, like, perfect character type trope. I don't like characters who, like, have this perfect life and everything's fantastic and blah 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 blah. I don't love that. I'm okay with it if it's like people think that their lives are perfect and then like they realize that it's not when they get to know them. But I don't like when the characters themselves are like narrating and they're like, I had the perfect life because I had the blah 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 parents and the girlfriend and the boyfriend or the blah 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 and I was so popular and my life was perfect until something happened to change that. Because normally it just leads to them realizing that their life wasn't as perfect as they thought, and I think it's a very predictable story arc. I want characters who are interesting and unique and who struggle and who have to try. Witch's Brew, a book that had a lot of components thrown in, but Witch's Brew, a book that had a lot of components thrown in, but the result was still magical. This book isn't a Halloween-y type book or a spooky book or anything like that, but it does have a lot of storylines and is very complex, but flows together very nicely, and the writing is done very well, and that is Tilt by Ellen Hopkins. This is the first book of hers that I've read. I have another one on my to-be-read shelf to read, but oh gosh, it was amazing. It's in poetry, so if you like poetry, this is it, and it's told from multiple narratives, so, like, there's a black page, okay, so there's this page, and up in the corner you can see the narrator's name is Michaela, and then at the end of Michaela's section, there'll be a black page that's a poem told from the perspective of a character who was in her story, but isn't her, and then it goes into a different narrator, so now it's Shane, and it rotates between a few narrators, Michaela, Shane, and Harley, so those are the three narrators that it rotates through, but then the black ones are anyone's up for grab. The characters are amazing, the stories are so good, they all, like, twine together, but it's fascinating. It talks about important stuff, like coming out and accepting who you are, and death and grief and life and teen pregnancy and all of those really important things. And I just think it's a really good, well-written book, but it's got a lot of components to it, and it just, magic. Alright, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Comment down below if you read any of these. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and subscribe, all that fun stuff. My social media links will be down below. Read a good book. Mwah.